What? Wait, what?
So, what would it take to convince you to pack up your entire life, surrender your life savings, and just, sail across an ocean to a country that absolutely does not exist?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you put it like that.
Right. It's one thing to buy, like, a bridge from a con artist.
The classic Brooklyn Bridge scam.
Yeah. The whole fast-talking huckster selling the Brooklyn Bridge to a tourist thing. You lose some money, you feel foolish, and you just move on.
But this is a whole other level.
It really is. It's another thing entirely to buy a ticket to Narnia, to actually pack your bags, round up your children, and step onto a ship bound for a literal fairy tale.
We are looking at a deception on a scale that truly defies belief.
Yeah.
This wasn't a simple financial scam where people lost a little bit of discretionary income. We are talking about an entire fabricated nation, and people literally staked their lives on it.
It's wild.
The sheer magnitude of this illusion, it requires a complete suspension of disbelief, not just by one gullible individual, but by thousands of people simultaneously.
Our mission today is to figure out where the line is drawn between hope and delusion. Because, to understand how something so monumental, so catastrophic could actually happen, we have to look at the world that made it possible.
Right. The environment matters so much here.
Yeah. So we have to rewind to Europe in the early 1820s. There was this overwhelming atmosphere at the time, like a massive appetite for overseas opportunity.
A hunger for it, really.
Yeah, people were hungry for new investments, sure, but on a much deeper level, they were desperate for a chance to completely reinvent their lives.
The socioeconomic mindset of that specific era is kind of the fertile soil for this entire story.
How so?
Well, Europe in the 1820s was going through these really profound transitions. The Napoleonic Wars had finally ended.
Right, which changed everything.
Yeah, you had a massive population of soldiers returning home looking for purpose and, well, income.
And the economy wasn't exactly booming.
Far from it. The domestic economy in Britain was really struggling. Interest rates on government bonds had plummeted, meaning traditional safe investments were barely yielding any return at all.
So people were looking for anywhere to put their money.
Right. Meanwhile, populations were looking outward. They're seeing vast territories in Latin America fighting for independence, opening up for trade, colonization, enterprise.
The air was thick with all these stories of astronomical fortunes being made overnight across the ocean.
Yeah, and when you have an entire society gripped by collective desperation mixed with collective ambition, it creates this massive blind spot for rational thought.
The desire for a better life just starts to override the brain's natural threat detection systems.
It shuts them down completely.
People wanted to believe in a promised land because the alternative was, like, accepting the harsh limitations of their current, very bleak reality in post-war Britain.
And into this exact environment walks a man named Gregor MacGregor.
That name alone.
Right. He was a Scottish adventurer who had actually fought in the South American Wars of Independence.
Okay, so he had real credentials.
He did. That genuine military background gave him an aura of unassailable legitimacy. He returned to Britain styling himself as the cazique, or prince of a nation he called Poyais.
Which brings up a really crucial question for me. Was MacGregor just a guy who got incredibly lucky with his timing, or did he, actively recognize and engineer a way to exploit this specific vulnerability in the public psyche?
Oh, MacGregor was highly attuned to the desires of his audience. He didn't just stumble into a lucky scam.
He knew what he was doing.
He weaponized the hopes of his generation. He recognized that people weren't just looking to buy land, right? They were looking to buy a new identity, a fresh start.
The promise of elevated social status.
Yeah. And he provided the ultimate blank canvas for all those projections. He saw that the British public was primed to believe in a Central American utopia, so he simply invented one.
And placed it right in the Bay of Honduras.
Just dropped it on the map.
He built a trap.
Yeah.
But he didn't just spin a good yarn at the local pub. He meticulously crafted an alternate reality, the fictional nation of Poyais.
The level of detail is terrifying.
And what gets me is the physical evidence he manufactured to make the lie tangible. We're talking about highly detailed maps outlining 8 million acres in the Bay of Honduras.
8 million acres?
Yeah. Official-looking documents with heavy wax seals, land certificates. I mean, he printed currency for a country that did not exist.
He went all out.
He even published a 350-page comprehensive guidebook under the pseudonym Captain Thomas Strangeways.
A whole book.
350 pages detailing the climate, the resources, the geography of Poyais. It promised a capital city called St. Joseph, an opera house, a parliament building, and get this, riverbeds glittering with gold.
I mean, the psychological weight of all that physical evidence, you really can't overstate it.
It's just so much stuff.
When you hold a thick, bound, 350-page guidebook in your hands, or when you unfurl a map with intricate coastlines, rivers, topographical markers, your brain makes an immediate subconscious leap.
Well, you don't even question it.
Right. The human mind assumes that the existence of the document proves the existence of the subject.
A map implies a surveyor.
Yeah, and currency implies a functioning economy.
Yeah.
A guidebook implies a real destination. People just thought, why would someone go to the immense trouble and expense of printing all these materials if the place wasn't real?
But hold on, I am struggling to understand this part. I get being desperate for a fresh start, but we're talking about the 1820s. Britain was a massive global maritime power. The Royal Navy ruled the waves.
Sure.
Wouldn't the British government or the Navy have mapped this area? I mean, how does no one just check a primary source before handing over their entire life savings?
Well, the information silos of the 19th century were incredibly deep. Today, we can verify geography with a satellite image in 3 seconds.
Right, you just pull out your phone.
But in 1822, mapmaking was still an evolving science, and Central America was vast, rugged, and largely undocumented by British authorities.
But it's just a blank spot.
Basically, MacGregor exploited that exact gap in collective knowledge. Furthermore, he didn't just print his fake currency in a back alley.
Oh, right, the printer.
Yeah, he hired the official printer for the Bank of Scotland to produce the Poyais dollars.
Wow.
By using a legitimate, deeply trusted institution to manufacture his fake evidence, he grafted the credibility of the Bank of Scotland onto his fictional nation. He was outsourcing his legitimacy.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the modern equivalent is truly terrifying.
It really is.
If someone did this today, it would be like creating a fake cryptocurrency backed by a fake Wikipedia ecosystem, fake Reddit threads, and forged SEC filings submitted through official government portals.
It's overwhelming.
The sheer volume of evidence just completely shorts out your natural skepticism. Your brain looks at the mountain of paperwork and says, well, nobody would fake an entire Wikipedia server and hack a bank just to trick me.
You trust the infrastructure of the information rather than verifying the information itself.
We constantly outsource our critical thinking to the aesthetics of authority.
Yeah, and in MacGregor's time, the aesthetics of authority were wax seals, heavy parchment, formal military titles, and officially printed books.
He just flooded the zone.
He flooded the zone with so much sensory, tangible evidence of Poyais that the victims genuinely felt they were making a rational, highly researched, evidence-based decision to invest.
He even set up a Poyasian embassy in London, didn't he?
He did. And he opened an office in Edinburgh. He created an environment where doubting Poyais felt like doubting the British government itself.
But, investing money is one thing. Passing the point of no return is another. The story shifts from a paper illusion to a physical reality when real people start taking the bait.
That's where it turns tragic.
These settlers, they sold everything they owned. Let's bring this down to earth and picture a specific person. Think about an ordinary shoemaker from Edinburgh. He has a modest life, maybe a multi-generational family home. He takes the deed to that home, sells it, and uses the money to buy a scrap of paper with a fake wax seal, declaring him the official shoemaker to the Princess of Poyais.
Heartbreaking.
He exchanges his real British sterling for useless Poyasian dollars. And then he and his family eagerly board ships to sail toward a promised utopia.
Just wow.
At what exact point does hope turn into a blinder? They didn't just invest spare cash, they wagered their entire existence on a brochure.
Well, the psychology of irreversible commitment takes over the moment the ink dries on the bill of sale for their homes.
There's no going back.
Once a family has sold their possessions, packed their trunks, and stepped onto a ship, the psychological cost of admitting it might be a lie becomes simply too heavy to bear.
The brain just won't let you go there.
The brain defends itself against that trauma by reinforcing the belief. It is much easier to double down on the fantasy than to face the terrifying, world-shattering possibility that you have destroyed your own life and your children's lives for nothing.
Yeah, as the ships left the harbor, hope ceased to be an emotion. It became a vital survival mechanism.
You really can picture them on the deck of these real ships, right?
The Honduras packet and the Kennersley Castle.
Yeah, looking out at the horizon in late 1822 and early 1823, they're holding that printed currency in their pockets.
Reading that 350-page guidebook to their children before bed.
Talking about the 3 harvests of corn a year they're going to enjoy, the agony of that hope, The utter vulnerability of it. They were entirely dependent on the word of a man they thought was a visionary prince.
And that oceanic voyage was the agonizing bridge between the illusion and the brutal reality.
They spent weeks at sea, their anticipation building, their belief reinforcing itself in the closed ecosystem of the ship.
Because everyone around them bought in.
Every single passenger on board had made the same catastrophic choice, so they constantly validated one another. They were trapped in a floating echo chamber where no dissenting information could possibly reach them.
Then they make landfall. The arrival at the Black River in the Bay of Honduras. This is supposed to be the bustling, prosperous nation of Poyais.
The capital city.
Yeah, they expect a deep-water harbor, customs officials, the great city of St. Joseph. But there was no city.
Nothing.
There was no government. There was no parliament building or opera house. There was no infrastructure whatsoever. Just untamed, hostile jungle.
Just wilderness.
But here is the thing that haunts me. When they first stepped off the boat and saw nothing but wilderness, did they immediately realize they'd been conned? Or did cognitive dissonance step in and make them think, oh, we must have just landed on the wrong beach?
It's tough to fathom.
Like, at what point do you stop looking at the map and realize you are standing in a swamp?
Well, cognitive dissonance is incredibly powerful, especially under extreme stress. The initial reaction for almost everyone was intense denial.
They didn't want to believe it.
They actually consulted the fake maps, they looked at the coastline, they tried to force the wilderness in front of them to match the fantasy printed in the guidebook.
Wow. They assumed a mistake was made.
Yeah, they assumed the captain of the ship had made a navigational error. Or they reasoned that the great city of St. Joseph was just over the next ridge, hidden by the trees.
Just out of sight.
The local indigenous populations eventually encountered them and were completely baffled by these Europeans looking for a city that didn't exist.
I can only imagine.
But the environment was unforgiving, and the illusion could only hold out against reality for a matter of days.
The tragedy of it is staggering. We talk about the mechanics of the deception, but it wasn't a clever caper or a victimless crime. It was a death sentence.
A literal death sentence.
Disease and starvation quickly took hold of the stranded settlers. They were dumped on a wild coast with nowhere to go, no shelter, and no means of survival.
And then the rainy season began.
Bringing malaria and yellow fever.
It was a massive, fatal human catastrophe. The elements stripped away the fantasy instantly.
All those grand titles didn't matter anymore.
Right. The very people who had purchased large estates, land certificates, and high-ranking government positions in the fictional administration of Poyais were reduced to desperate foraging.
Just trying to stay alive.
A passing ship from British Honduras, which is modern-day Belize, eventually found them, but the rescue came too late for most.
The mortality rate was just horrific. Of the roughly 250 settlers who sailed on those first ships, some estimates suggest nearly 180 of them died.
180 out of 250.
The narrative of a clever, audacious scam often obscures the sheer devastating loss of life. Entire families were wiped out by one man's fiction.
It's sobering.
Moving from the physical tragedy to the psychological autopsy, how do intelligent, rational people let this happen? You break down the mechanics of belief, and it seems to require this perfect storm.
It really does.
You have MacGregor's extraordinary confidence, the overwhelming power of social proof, the settlers' boundless optimism, and a crippling amount of confirmation bias.
Well, confidence is deeply contagious, and MacGregor was an absolute master of it. He presented himself with the unwavering certainty of a head of state.
He never broke character.
He didn't act like a desperate salesman. He acted like royalty, granting a rare privilege to the lucky few.
Oh, that's such a good point.
That posture naturally bypasses a lot of logical defenses because we are conditioned to defer to authority. Then you add the social proof. Humans are inherently social creatures. We look to others around us to determine what is safe, what is normal, and what is true.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just about individual gullibility. It is about the crowd.
Yeah, the crowd effect is huge.
If all your neighbors in Edinburgh are buying land certificates for Poyais, if the smartest bankers in London are investing in Poyaisian bonds, suddenly you feel like the crazy one for not buying in.
Right, the fear of missing out overrides the fear of losing your money.
The crowd literally gives you permission to abandon your skepticism.
And when you combine that crowd mentality with confirmation bias, the trap snaps shut.
Because they wanted it so badly.
Once the settlers decided they wanted the Poyais dream to be true, mostly because their lives in Europe were difficult, impoverished, or just unfulfilling, they only absorbed information that confirmed the dream.
They ignored any red flags.
And there were red flags. There were skeptics in London who warned that it sounded way too good to be true. But acknowledging the red flags meant giving up the dream.
It's so sad.
Highly hopeful stories are uniquely persuasive because they offer a painless solution to the pain of the present. People weren't just buying land, they were buying relief.
So before we close out this case file, let's evaluate the historical certainty of the core narrative. Let's look at the established record.
Right, so we have some established facts. One established fact is that the nation of Poyais never existed as advertised in the Bay of Honduras.
And another established fact. The tragedy, the suffering, and the devastating loss of lives experienced by the immigrants who sailed there were entirely real.
But there's also a part that is still debated, which is Gregor MacGregor's true intentions.
The debate over his intentions is chilling to me. Was it pure calculated malice from day one? Or did he, on some level, eventually begin to believe his own myth?
It's a dark thought.
When you construct an alternate reality that elaborates, and you surround yourself with people who treat you as the visionary ruler of that reality, the line between the con artist and the delusion might really begin to blur.
It forces us to question the nature of the deceiver as much as the deceived. MacGregor went to his grave never fully admitting the totality of the fraud.
He just kept going.
He continued to promote colonization schemes long after the initial disaster.
The most powerful destructive lies are almost always constructed directly from people's greatest hopes. The tragedy of Poyais stands as a timeless warning that extraordinary confidence can, terrifyingly, be much more convincing to the human brain than extraordinary evidence.
We often assume that facts will protect us, that logic is a sufficient shield against deception.
But it's not.
The story of those settlers reminds us that when you weaponize hope, the demand for evidence simply disappears. People will accept a forged map if it points to a place where they can finally be happy.
Before we go, consider this. If MacGregor's scheme relied on the slow speed of 19th century information and the isolation of his victims, how much faster could a Poyais be built today?
That's a scary thought.
With AI-generated video, fake virtual real estate, deepfake testimonials, and instant global communication, someone could build a digital utopia in an afternoon. Are we actually more vulnerable to the illusion of authority now than they were in 1822?
The mechanics of human belief haven't changed, only the tools have evolved.
Every remarkable story reminds us of one simple truth.
Reality is often far stranger than fiction.
Thank you for listening to Wait, What?
Until next time.
Stay curious.
Wait, 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 wait.